All right, everybody, welcome back to Garza Gaitan and the Game. We got a great episode today. We're going to be analyzing President Trump's first 100 days in the game. Remember, this podcast is where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics with Daniel Garza and Wadi Gaitan here. We're very excited. We want to ask you guys, if you've been enjoying the show, if you've been watching us on social media, make sure to subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and all our social media channels. With that being said, Daniel, how's it going?
I think it's a good Wadi. The game's heating up with Trump in the first 100 days.
A lot is heating up. There are obviously critics from the left, but there are a lot of the country, independents, people from the right. I would say even some people from the left who are recognizing that these first 100 days have been historic. It's been an administration that has not held back. They said promises made, work to be done, and they did that from day one. So much to talk about. Everything from tariffs, from a historic moment with Marco Rubio being the first Hispanic Secretary of State, Zelensky visiting the White House, the first joint address to the Congress. But Daniel, I just want to take it to you. When you think of the first 100 days, what stands out to you? What are the highlights? What's your analysis here?
Well, Wadi, if we look back, one of the things that we predicted was that in this administration, because they had had 4 years in between administrations, that was unprecedented, right? That had never been done before, where you lose a re-election and then you come back and win an election, which is like just fascinating. The prediction was that, of course, because Trump had so much time to think about it, he was going to hit the ground running. He knew the political landscape. He knew the institutions. He knew the processes, and how things worked this time around, right? And who he could count on. And sure enough, it was just a massive blur of activity that we saw right out of the blocks, right? It was like a 100-yard dash for the 100 days. So much so that he had the Democrats on their heels. You had, of course, the courts spring into action, trying to stop him at every executive decision that he made, to the point where it's getting kind of sickening to see the kind of intervention from the courts that we're seeing. I don't like it. I don't like district court judges putting national mandates and stopping an executive from performing his duties, especially when they're within the bounds of the Constitution. But because of nitpicking or because it doesn't fit your agenda, you impose your own rule on things. So anyways, sure, there's been challenges. Of course, the tariffs have not worked out the way he thought it was gonna. Even though he's made some progress in getting, countries to negotiate so that you can, bring about fair trade. Great. But I do want to go down the list of, I think, a lot of the accomplishments that he's had. But, just from the 10,000-foot level, bravo. I think he's done an amazing job. I think the team that he put together, they knew their assignment, and they got, to execution quickly. And we're starting to see a lot of progress.
Daniel, I think that last point is so key. There's such a difference. I think in 2016, a lot of folks would say that Trump kind of allowed sort of party officials and a lot of folks that have sort of been career staffers that have worked at previous White Houses or sort of were next in line. Everything from Reince Priebus, who was the first chief of staff. No hit on him, just an observation that a lot of the folks that he brought on were, again, these sort of career folks in politics.
Establishment. Yep.
Established folks. You see that complete change this time. I mean, you have notable figures like Elon Musk. Obviously, has never held a position in government at all. It has just really been a disruptor in his space. Has been a disruptor in Tesla, in SpaceX, and then turning Twitter into X. So he's someone who really comes in that space. And I want to talk a little bit about Elon Musk, because I think a lot of the highlights come from that department. They come from the amount of government employees. I would say one of the first things that they did, one of the first things that they did is they gave people an option to essentially retire. They said you're going to get 8 months of severance pay. These weren't people that were just fired and let go. These people that were going to get 8 months of severance pay, or you had to come back into the office. You had to be there in person. And then I think what the second thing was, he started asking on Fridays, what were the top 5 things that you worked on this week? So let's go a little bit into that. What's your thoughts on the role that Elon Musk has played in these first 100 days?
I think what's been fascinating to see the reaction of what Elon and his team at Doge have done sort of breaks down into two camps. If you're in the camp that thinks that government has gotten way too big, it is a massive leviathan that has begun to intervene in the lives of everyday people, in your work, in your church, in your family, in everything. It is controlling your behavior more and more. Then you are thrilled that Elon Musk and his team went to work and started slashing away, these reckless programs that we were paying billions for, right? And he started to eliminate the administrative state, right? The apparatchik, that was financing these woke pet projects, financing, of course, this media industrial complex, and to the center left, by the way. Nothing was being paid for to promote any kind of center-right messaging. But at the same time, it was also this massive NGO industrial complex that reached its hands and its tentacles across the globe, right? Basically telling countries what agenda to decide on, to push, to promote, whether it was LGBT, whether it was a DEI, whether it was whatever woke project that they were pushing onto these folks as a condition of getting these grants. Just incredible, the kind of control that they had. And again, you're subsidizing this media cabal that I think, the Elon took care of, right? And exposing the waste, the fraud, and the abuse suffered by the American taxpayer, right? This is our money that you're dealing with here, right? And they forget that. They spend it willy-nilly on their pet projects with no consideration to what the American people, have to say about it. And so if you're on that camp, thrilled. And I'm on that camp, and again, bravo to Elon Musk, and I wish he would continue, but I get it, right? He has to save his companies, and that's why he has to draw back a little bit. If you're on the other camp who feels that government is the answer to every social ill under the sun, well, then you're upset at Elon Musk, right? Because he is, pushing back the curtain on, who really was controlling the media, who really was controlling a lot of the regimes across the globe, and who, again, who were the people that were involved in wasting our money, right? These bureaucrats. And so it was the Democrat Party and the party leadership who came to the defense of, the bureaucrats and the NGOs and the media who were getting exposed. So I can't say enough about Elon Musk and what he did, what he exposed, and I hope what his team continues to expose. I want more of it.
When it comes to Elon Musk, I think people have to become very independent. And what I mean by that is judge by the details, right? Because a lot of folks, there's a lot of noise about them coming after Social Security, coming after Medicare fraud, coming after people who are working in government and have, I think there was even a narrative where people are just fired and they're without homes now. No, these people got severance pay. And when they talk about Social Security, they're also going after the fraud. They're going over the waste. I mean, I think that the government has proven time after time that they are not the place, or they're not best positioned to innovate and to be efficient in this place when it comes to these programs. But the Elon is just coming in and saying, how do we make government more efficient? It does have its role, but how do we make sure that it's efficient? It's not just big. It's not just employees. It's not just numbers. It's actually something that's delivering, because these are our taxpayer dollars. These are individuals that have put their trust in the government. So I think what Elon is doing is just really uncovering a lot of things that for years were not reported on things that no one ever went in there and had really the audacity to say, what's behind the curtain? Where are people's tax dollars really being put? Daniel, another topic, switching a little bit, but still on the first 100 days, you can't get past these 100 days without talking about international foreign affairs. Everything from, I think, Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, being one of the first people to come visit Donald Trump. I think it was in the first 30 days when Donald Trump started deporting individuals back to Colombia, and Petro sent back the plane, did not allow it to land essentially in Colombia. But within a couple of hours, there were tariffs, the first sort of use of the president when it came to that tool. Bukele coming to the United States, Zelensky. What kind of grade, what kind of look do you give when it comes to this administration, foreign affairs, and the role of Marco Rubio in all of this?
You know what I find fascinating about the left is that they almost want to apologize for our strength, right? For how big our role is in the positioning that we have across the globe. And Donald Trump, to the contrary, is not afraid to leverage that strength, right? And that might, the economic might, military might, and diplomatic might. And that's exactly what he does, right? He leverages it to the interest of the U.S. And if that means that he has to strong arm a Petro, or Sheinbaum, and try to, because look, I mean, at the end of the day, what happens in Colombia does have an effect on us. What happens in Venezuela does have an effect on us, and what happens in Mexico especially affects us, impacts us in a way that impacts our security, our economics, our trade, commerce, relationships, everything, right? And so we have to have a say in what is happening, especially when Sheinbaum, for example, in Mexico, is indifferent to what is happening with the growth of the cartels, of human smuggling, of the sexual trade, pedophilia, all this stuff that is happening along the border and creeping in, right? So to put checks, to put conditions on Sheinbaum and have her do his bidding to the interest of the U.S., I think this is exactly what your might can get you, right? And should get you. But always when we can probably also provide equal value to these countries, right? I think we can't just, of course, be a bully. We also have to, because we're so interdependent, generate value on behalf of those countries as well. And we do, right? Through trade and through the water that we share with Mexico, the resources that we share, the people, all of it, right? I think it has to be a collaboration between these two countries. And when one, side is not, putting up their end of the bargain, then I think something has to be done. And sometimes you have to be firm about it. So when it came to border security, I think Trump knew right away that he had to make deals with different countries on them, of course, policing their borders, on Mexico policing its border, on maybe, working with Bukele, to handle some of the traffic that's going back, or with Petro in Colombia. That was essential. And look at this: 95% of the illegal flow into the U.S. has been wiped out. I mean, I think one of the biggest successes that this administration has shown in the first 100 days is now that there is order and control at the border, right? So we can focus now on the really bad elements. And the message has gone out across the Western Hemisphere, across, the African continent and the Middle East. You're not going to come to our borders and get away with it like you did under Biden anymore, right? And so they're not showing up at the borders. Lo and behold, right? Look what happens when you show a little bit of strength and you leverage your might. So hats off to Trump on that.
Yeah, the numbers prove that point. I think at the same period of time, hundreds of thousands of people had been coming in through the southern border at the same period when you compare the Biden numbers to the Trump administration. On the topic of immigration, it is one where I think a lot of people are going to keep their eyes open for the next 100 days, because border security is one component of immigration. Deportations have been one. There have been reports out there also of Trump sort of signaling Congress for a farm workforce visa program. When you think of immigration, you talked a little bit about the first 100 days. What do you think is the best strategy for the Trump administration? What should he be doing in this space? I think you saw the interview that he did with Rachel Campos Duffy on Fox Noticias. It's no secret that Hispanic media, Univision, Telemundo, play a big role when it comes to driving narrative in the Hispanic community. How do you view, again, kind of two questions here, the immigration space moving forward, one that is very close to home for many Hispanics, and then the engagement that the president has done in talking to Hispanic media and to the Hispanic community in general?
Yeah. So right now, obviously, the biggest emphasis has been along the border, right? Making sure, whether that's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem or Homan, who have been basically his messengers on this issue, his police, his muscle. I think they have distinguished themselves in a way that, again, has brought order to the border. Look, Latinos themselves are probably the ones who are celebrating this the most. And so, well, why? It's not because we're against immigrants. It's because we're against chaos and lawlessness. And when you have a criminal element that is coming within that otherwise law-abiding, migrant flow of folks who are showing up at the border without prior authorization, the ones who are harmed, the ones who are exploited the most by this criminal element coming in with the other migrants are Latinos themselves. It's Tren de Aragua that is doing the damage on the Latino community. And so we want to make sure that our borders are secure. We want our communities safe. We want the criminal element and those who would do us harm be kept out of America. But when you have a Biden administration that is just opening the door and welcoming everybody, are you insane? Do you know what you're doing to our communities here? You're putting, you're undermining our safety, our risk, our security. And so that was a big reason why so many Latinos voted for Trump, because they wanted an end to the chaos and the lawlessness. And so, great, terrific. Now that we've, sort of got the border under control, I think now, and you mentioned it, like the president is beginning to talk about, ways that we can keep a lot of the good law-abiding folks here, right? Or maybe a touchback program, right, where they go back to the country of origin and then they are allowed to come back into the country because they've been here for 10 to 20 years. They have children who are citizens or relatives. They have proven themselves to be good, decent, hardworking, industrious people who are going to make America stronger. And that's what the president was talking about when he was talking to Rachel. Let's now get to the business of keeping good folks here, right? And allowing those folks that prove themselves to stay. Rachel even showed an interview of an undocumented worker who was pro-Trump, and he said, "I want that guy here," right? It's not that he wants folks, or he doesn't want immigrants coming to the country. There just has to be an order to things. There has to be a process. We need to know who you are and what your past has been. Is there a criminal past involved? If it is, I'm sorry, you're not going to get into the country, or at least you shouldn't, right? And so I think in that sense, you balance it with expanding legal channels, but controlling the border 100%.
Yeah, very, very much so. It's going to be interesting to see those next 100 days. This administration has been one that has not held back. They came with a mission in mind. President Trump put the people that he believes were going to be executors. Those people have shown to have taken on that same mission that he has. Daniel, our last topic to finish off.
But let me say something about the next 100 days before we move into the next topic. I really feel it's important that he has brought down energy prices by 30%, that egg prices have come down by 50%, that the private sector labor participation rate right now is spiking as we speak, right? That he's done so much to try to bring peace to the Ukraine and Russian war, that he has dismantled DEI across the board. And I think what Pete Hegseth is doing at the Pentagon is incredible, when it comes to that issue. DOGE also, slashing, the reckless spending that we were talking about. The tax reform that he's going to work on next, where he's going to not only extend the tax cuts, but hopefully we can make them permanent, right? And that would keep a lot more money in people's pocket. And again, that would just grow the economy incredibly. Slashing regulations. Wadi, a Rasmussen poll showed that he is above 50% approval rating with the Latino community. That's incredible when you think about it. So the next 100 days, I think he's well positioned here. I think the only weakness right now that I see, the Achilles heel is that he's hurting on tariffs, right? Because this is a tough one. This is a long game. And so, he has to play this one. I mean, you almost have to bat 1,000 on this one. But I mean, I see countries lining up. I'm willing to give them time, tolerate a little bit of, that negotiation timetable. But I think the next 100 days is very promising, given what we've seen in the last 100.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's going to be curious to see where some of their pivots are, where they're going to iron out some of those wrinkles, specifically on tariffs. I think that's probably going to be the one that most folks are going to be looking at very closely. But yeah, Daniel, before wrapping up, we do want to talk a little bit about Maria Corina Machado. Times has featured her as one of the 100 most influential people. The article itself, or the recognition, the honoring, was written by Marco Rubio. For those who might not be familiar with her role and why Times would point her out, how would you describe her leadership role in Venezuela and her role in what's going on in a country that we know for so long had such an immense economy, was one of the top states or countries in Latin America, and now it's completely flipped, where it's one of the poorest countries, or where one of the people are facing the least amount of democracy in?
Well, Maria Corina Machado, of course, leads the dissidents in Venezuela. She is basically, even though they, positioned somebody else for the opposition presidency, who I believe won, but of course you had a sham election with Maduro, and he refused to cede, of course, his seat as president, because I think he knows what's going to happen to him. The the day that he does, Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro have absolutely wrecked Venezuela. And Maria Corina Machado is one of the brave, courageous, bold voices that has really stepped up here to be a true advocate on behalf of the Venezuelan people who suffer, who are in pain economically, who are facing hunger, scarcity, the obliteration of their rights, of their individual freedoms. And so they need a champion. And Maria Corina is one of those people. She is a woman who has shown fortitude that is uncommon, to be honest with you. She is the likes of Rosa Maria Paya, who's trying to do the same, with the Cuban community. She is in the same league as a Margaret Thatcher, as far as I'm concerned. There are women who sometimes will transcend gender, race, their status, their position, the country that they're from, and I think just showcase the highest virtues of humanity. And I believe she's one of them. And obviously she's in danger. She's in constant danger. There's been attempts at her life. There's been attempts to kidnap her for being that champion of the people in Venezuela. And that will continue to be the case. And so she needs protection and she needs leverage, and if the U.S. could give her that, that would go a long way. But yeah, I can't express enough accolades about what a Maria Corina Machado means and symbolizes to the people of Venezuela.
Yeah, very much happy to see that Times included her in that list, and that Secretary of State Marco Rubio had the opportunity to write up that recognition. It's something that, kudos to them on both parts. Well, folks, there you have it. That's been our episode focused on the first 100 days of President Trump. Thank you guys for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe. Stay tuned for next week's episode. But until then, everyone have a good one.